Hello everyone, in today's video I will be narrating stories that I found off of Reddit. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But without further ado,
let's get straight into these stories.
this happened over 10 years ago, so excuse me if the details are a little fuzzy. When I was in high school, my friend Claire came to sleep over. We made some plans to sneak out and hang out with some guys, and then one of them would drive us home. We go out to our friend's apartment, have some fun, and around midnight we decide it's time for us to head back. But when we ask to be taken back, everyone says no, despite previously agreeing to bring us back. Everyone said they were too drunk or too high, so we eventually decided to just start walking back, and we would make some phone calls to see if anyone could pick us up and bring us the rest of the way back. My house was a good 20 minutes away by car on the highway, so there was no way we were walking all the way back. The apartment was towards the back of the complex, so we start making our way to the entrance. We don't even get halfway there before a car slowly starts rolling up behind us. I was 15 or 16 at the time and very naive to the ways of the world, so I wasn't too concerned, but Claire was a little smarter than me on this night. She tells me to start walking faster, so we start walking faster. The car also picks up their pace behind us. Again, she tells me to walk faster, so we start moving as fast as we can, and that's when the car pulled slightly in front of us and two of the passenger doors open and two men get out. Realizing there's no walking faster to get out of this situation, she instructs me to run now, so she takes off running and I follow her. She runs towards a group of parked cars and jumps behind a pickup truck, and for a minute we hope and pray that we weren't spotted. This is where details get a little fuzzy. One of them must have gotten back in the car at some point, as there's only one of them following us behind the truck. We hear a set of footsteps quickly approaching, and she quietly indicates that we're now going into stealth mode. This man is on the other side of the truck that we're hiding behind. He's circling the truck looking for us, and we're slowly and quietly circling it on the opposite side to avoid being spotted. It felt like a scene from a movie or video game. We somehow managed to do 2 or 3 circles around the vehicle without being detected, and by the grace of the gods, he gives up and decides to go back to the car with his friends. This is our one shot to get away. She tells me to run again, so we run for what felt like an eternity, but in reality was probably only 15 to 20 seconds. We find the pool house area and find a spot to hide. We were headed behind some fences and bushes and were anxiously waiting to see if they discover us. Their car pulls around to the pool house and we're biting our nails hoping they don't stop and get out. The car slowly drives away and we realize we haven't been spotted. We were safe for now, but the car circled around the apartment complex for hours and hours and hours. They weren't giving up on looking for us. We were safe for the time being, but now we needed to find a way out of there. It was the middle of winter, and of course we were dressed to impress the guys we went to hang out with, so short shorts and revealing tops. Libra phrasing. We found a dirty, disgusting Captain America blanket that we huddled up under while making phone calls to find someone to pick us up. We tried contacting the guys at the apartment, but no one answered our calls. None of our friends answered our calls. We felt completely alone and hopeless, but around 5 in the morning someone finally answered and said they would pick us up. The best news I had ever heard in my life. Our friend gets to the apartment complex but can't find the pool house. The group of men are still constantly circling around, so there's no way we're coming out of hiding. We managed to figure out where our friend is at with a little detective work, figuring out what building they're facing, what's in front of them, are there dumpsters nearby, clues like that. We figure out where they're at, so we make a run for it. We spot their car and hop in as fast as we can. Go go go, we tell them, and our friend speeds off towards the entrance. We pass the group of men on the way out, and that was the last we saw of them. We made it back around 6 in the morning, just in time to sneak back in without my parents ever knowing we even left. If Claire hadn't been with me that night, I definitely would have been abducted or possibly killed. So thankful for Claire and our friend that picked us up, but a big screw you to the adult men we went to hang out with as teenagers, and especially screw you to the guys that intended to harm us. If you're liking this video, all I ask is that you make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you. I was 15 years old living in a medium-sized city in North Florida. It has about 60,000 people, but some areas were really spread out and rural. Don't think of it like New York City or anything, more like a lot of houses spread out over a huge area and condensed shopping centers. I was a bit of a punk that my parents had a hard time controlling, so that meant I basically snuck out constantly and was always riding my bike around the city all hours of the night with my friends. fighting and constantly causing trouble. For reference, I was probably 5'10" and 150 pounds. My next door neighbors were my best friends. Let's call them Nick and Tim. Nick was younger than us at probably 5'5" and 140 pounds, and Tim was 5'8" and easily 210 pounds. Nick and Tim were brothers only a year or so apart. On that night, Tim had texted me around 1 in the morning asking me to ride bikes with him and his brother to his girlfriend's house so he can get lucky. I remember being hesitant because of how long the bike ride was. I just looked it up and it was 9.5 miles from my house to her street. But Tim begged and begged me to go until I agreed. Our city had a curfew, meaning any police in the area that saw you and assumed you were a minor would stop you and possibly issue you a ticket and bring you home. That meant we had to be careful about being seen by cars going by. Well, the bike ride to her house went by without any issues. We took our time, joked around, smoked a little pot, and genuinely just enjoyed the ride together. We ran out of what little pot we had on the way and finally got to his girlfriend's house. After what felt like an hour, Tim snuck around the back to go in, and Nick and I just sat on an electrical box and talked. Maybe 30 minutes went by and Tim triumphantly snuck out of the house bragging about his time in there and says we should head out. Annoyed at how long it took and nearly sober, we both agreed. The first mile of the ride went by smoothly, but things changed. We had just passed a decent sized shopping center which was closed and a church. We rode by it slowly in zero rush at all. After we passed it, it led to a long stretch of road with woods and canals on each side. The road had 2 lanes on each side separated by palm trees and landscaping in the middle, sidewalks on both sides, and on the right side another road connects to the parkway. We were riding on the right hand sidewalk. Off in the distance we saw a very tall older man wearing a yellow raincoat and a large backpack. He was walking back and forth on the sidewalk under a street light on the corner of the parkway and the side street. We all went silent as we got closer. I don't think he could have seen or heard us as there were no lights over us and there were sprinklers going off in the median. I remember hearing him dragging his feet across the ground and mumbling. He was dragging his feet almost like he was trying to brush away the concrete to find something underneath it. The mumbling was incoherent and frantic. Honestly, it made my heart sink and my stomach knot up. I couldn't understand anything he was saying, and the only way to go to get home was to go by him. Nick said let's cross the street and get onto the other sidewalk. Tim and I agreed. I remember this so distinctly. We crossed the landscaped median and a jet of sprinkler water hit me directly in the face and got into my mouth and my eyes. It smelled like sulfur and tasted horribly. On the other side we could hear the mumbling and scraping of his feet clearer. I could now see more details about him. He was smoking a cigarette and was probably 6'5", had on a huge green backpack, was extremely skinny, had long gray hair, was wearing combat boots and blue ripped jeans, and that he had a full white beard. He didn't seem to notice us until we were directly across from him. We all had our eyes locked in his direction when he suddenly stopped walking, talking and scraping his feet, looked up from the ground and let out this god-awful screech. It was like he tried to say 100 words at once. None of us knew what he tried to say. After the initial scream, I could make out "What are you doing?" It startled us. We were now 25 yards away from him and then he screams, "What are you looking at?" I was a foolish teenager. I piped up to say something smart and Tim riding next to me grabbed onto me and said don't say a word. So I didn't, and in hindsight I am so glad I didn't. He kept screaming in our direction and we kept riding. The further we rode, the fainter the screaming got. Then it stopped. We crossed the street again to the other side and made it about a mile down the road, all of us on edge. We glanced over our shoulders constantly to make sure he wasn't following us. We talked briefly about it and how strange it was, but we were glad it was over with, or so we thought. Nick and Tim were riding in front of me when I thought I heard something behind me. I turned around and there he was, maybe an arm's length away, headed directly for me. The yellow raincoat hood was pulled up over his head and buttoned. This guy was standing up on his mountain bike pedaling as hard as he could. We locked eyes and he started screaming. I made scream it. He screamed not words, not any language, a constant scream as loud as he could. I have the chills writing this even now, as a 25-year-old grown man with a wife and a baby. I screamed he's right behind us and stood up pedaling as hard as I could. I think we all did. And he was right behind us the whole time, screaming. Every so often he would get right on top of us, screaming and trying to knock us off of our bikes. I don't know how long we rode with him behind us, but it felt like eternity. I think age played a factor because he must have got tired and let us get ahead a bit. Exhausted, we pulled into a neighborhood and stared cutting through yards trying to lose him. We jumped off our bikes and all just decided if he's still chasing us, we were going to make our stand together and fight. It was like a hive mind decision. All too tired to keep running, it was our only option. We waited for him, but he never came. I don't even remember hearing him. I still can't recall when we lost him. I called my house phone, waking both my parents up in the process, and told my dad about the situation. He told me to get home and figure it out. I asked to talk to my mother, and she yelled at me on the phone and refused to come pick us up as I stood in the middle of the street hoping this crackhead didn't come and kill us all. I got home with Nick and Tim in tow, who asked asked if they could crash in my room. Of course I said yes. I think we all still have some weird feelings about that night, and we never really spoke of it again. I don't know what he wanted. He was clearly on drugs, but it makes me wonder if he would have robbed us or worse. 2 weeks ago, my fiance, who is 24, and my future father-in-law, who is 53 years old, and myself, who is also 24 years old, take a little road trip to pick up some jazz cabbage in a different state as we live in a dry state. The drive up was uneventful as per usual. However, on the way back home, we had passed a slower moving vehicle, which was a white truck. We were coming into a town where the speed came from 45 to 35 miles per hour. As we start to slow, this white truck nearly rams into the back of us. I am sitting in the back at this point and turn to look over my shoulder and can see the white truck swerve up into the other lane to avoid hitting us. At this point, my future father-in-law is the one driving and motions a what the heck gesture to the truck behind us. The driver of the white truck proceeds to tell him to pull over. My future father-in-law, being a hothead, obliges and pulls over. He steps out of the vehicle and says some colorful language towards the other car. The driver of the white truck is also out of his vehicle and walking up into my future father-in-law's face. At this point, my fiance steps out and I follow. I see things getting heated between these two men and I throw myself in between them. Everything next happens so fast, I'm going to try my best to recapture. As I'm between everyone, the driver of the white truck pushes past me and shoves my future father-in-law. This gets my fiance to step in, hey, don't push my dad, to try and split them up. Next thing we see is the other passenger in the vehicle, who is easily in his 40s and close to 500 pounds, sucker punch my fiance, who is 225 pounds. You just punched me. Somehow I get pushed to the ground and my guys are fighting the other guys. Fists are flying, they're rolling down into the ditch. The guy that was 500 pounds is on my fiance, pulling his hair and scratching him. Now, I'm against jumping, but this man had 300 pounds on my man. I jump in, I start punching and kicking and doing anything I can to get this man off of him. My future father-in-law is quaking the main guy in the other vehicle in a chokehold. He can see that we're struggling with the big guy and forgets the main guy to hit the other guy in the face until he got off my fiance. Cops were called, everyone was separated. The party in the white truck decided not to press charges. We agreed to not press charges and were sent on our way. So did the man in the white truck. Let's not meet again. Alright, but that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But as always,
Have a nice day.